Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Post Match Live with We Ain't Got No History. My name is David, and we're back here a week after the win over, Watford. I missed the video thing after the Everton win in midweek, thanks to some technical / logistical difficulties, but nobody cares about that, I'm sure, since we're now on to the next game. The games are coming thick and fast these days, as they normally do when you're involved in both European and domestic competitions. So another game for Chelsea. There's two more before the next international break today. Pretty straightforward. Good, mostly controlled. A couple weird moments aside. Good win over Bournemouth, 1-0, with Eden Hazard scoring his first goal of the Premier League season. Not to be confused with the first goal in all competitions, since he's already gotten that started. But probably our best player, certainly in the attacking third of the pitch, old Eden. When he's on form, we generally have a good chance of winning. And so it were today. Let's start at the beginning, as the good place to start normally. Conte lined up in the 3-4-3, as we like to see these days. We tried the 3-5-2 for a while, and we might actually see it against Roma, if I were to guess. But the way it's worked for us best is a more defensive formation, where it kind of cedes possession to the opposition. So it's not necessarily a good thing to use against teams we're expected to beat, such as Bournemouth. Would probably be a good choice in midweek, but we'll get to that later. So today it was a 3-4-3 for Chelsea. In fact, it was the same 3-4-3, exact same 3-4-3 that all the our polling on the site came through as the preferred formation for the vast majority of Chelsea fans. That doesn't mean that people weren't complaining about it, because obviously individuals will have their own opinion. But it was the preferred lineup for both Conte and the majority of fans. So it was Courtois in goal, the back three of Rudiger, not Cahill, as news that was cheered widely and disproportionately to Cahill's importance to this team over the last few years. But good old Antonio Rudiger back, which is fine by me, since I considered him more comfortable on the ball, and we were expected to dominate possession, which we did. So in that sense, Rudiger over Cahill was a good choice. Plus, Cahill had made multiple starts in a row, and I'm sure he will be back come Tuesday, and probably next Sunday as well, against Manchester United. So Rudiger as left center back. I don't even know what you call that position these days. The left-sided of the three center defenders. David Luiz in the middle after a midweek rest, and Cesar Azpilicueta, who also got a rare rest in midweek as his usual right-sided center back. Midfield four of Marcos Alonso, since there's nobody else to play left wing back. Bakayoko and Fabregas in the middle, since nobody else was available to play central midfield. And Davide Zappacosta as your right wing back, since there's nobody else to play right wing back. It's a bit of a theme. As it turned out, Drinkwater was actually fit enough to be on the bench, and he made a 10-minute cameo towards the end. But he certainly wasn't fit enough to start after getting his first minutes of the season on Wednesday against Everton. So that's your midfield four, and the front three of Hazard, Morata, and Pedro, which I'd surmise is our first choice front three. Certainly Pedro's playing better form these days than Willian, although when Willian came on for also the final few minutes, he actually looked pretty enterprising and full of running and some good contributions. So much like Fabregas, I think Willian's perhaps best way to use Willian is to have him as an impact late game sub as opposed to from the beginning. But we'll see how that role evolves as we move into the middle of the season. Certainly Pedro, I think, has earned his starts, and it's nice to see him start a few games in a row when it matters. Our opponents were Bournemouth, who had been one of the, and still are, one of the worst teams in the league. Only 2 wins on the season so far, but of course, as we saw with just a few weeks ago when we went to the worst team in the Premier League, namely Crystal Palace, just because you're at the bottom of the table doesn't mean you can't pull off a shock victory over one of the better teams in the league. So, there's always things to watch out for in the Premier League, and the margins in this game, Chelsea basically dominated from first to last, but even at the end, the margin was only 1 goal, and that is the most dangerous lead as there ever was one. They'll say it's a 2-0, but really, by a long distance, the 1-0 is the most dangerous lead. Anything can happen, as we saw. Bournemouth only had 1 shot on target, and that was the 92nd minute. And if that guy hits his shot a little better, I think it might have been Sermon or I don't remember who it was. Let's go with Sermon since he's their leading goal scorer. If he hits that shot a little better and not straight at Courtois, we might be talking about a 1-1, a highly undeserved 1-1. But sometimes that's how things happen. So we needed that second goal. It didn't quite arrive. Some of it was due to our own wastefulness. I think we finished with 18 shots and only 5 on target. Morata missed at least 1 sitter and then missed another one that we can probably credit with Begovic making a really nice save. Probably a better save than he ever made in his Chelsea career, because I can't really recall him ever making such a tremendous save. I might be wrong there, but good old Asmir. I got nothing against Asmir Begovic, but man, he played better today than I think he ever played for Chelsea. Or maybe it just made him look good. It's always 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But Begovic made at least 1 really good save. He also gave the ball away a couple of times, Begovic did, and we didn't quite make him pay for it, which was unfortunate. Ake made 1 big mistake too, and we didn't make him pay for it, so it's just how it is. Chelsea's first goal was ruled out for offside, probably incorrectly. If there was an offside, it was Azpilicueta, and it was like the hair on the back of his hand, or neck, or head, or whatever possibly could count as an offside. Of course, the referee or the assistant referee on the sideline can't really see that well, so it's all just a guessing game. And he called Azpilicueta offside, even though he probably wasn't, and Morata should have had a goal there. It's the 1-0 is probably not exactly an accurate reflection of what happened in the game, either through Chelsea's dominance or especially that and our wastefulness in front of goal. Other than that 92nd minute shot, I think the one good chance that Bournemouth worked was a cross from the right side, and it looked like it for whoever to slot into and equalize, but Azpilicueta came out of nowhere to block that shot. So Azpilicueta, as usual, back on form. We had been a little concerned about old Dave's performances, but it looks like that rest in midweek did him some good, because he was back to his usual magnificence today. Mark says poor performance. I'm not so sure it was really a poor performance. There were a couple of sloppy plays, but overall I thought it was a very good, or at least a good 90 minutes with some nice patient combinations, some really nice well-worked attacks that we didn't quite get the goal that they would have deserved. But 1-0 never looks that good, but I mean it was still a pretty comfortable. As far as 1-0s go, this one was pretty comfortable overall. Bournemouth lined up also in a 3-4-3, or I guess they called it a 3-4-1-2. Old Chelsea boy, as we talked about, Begovic in goal. He's played every game for them so far. Nathan Ake, the guy who caused us a lot of consternation over the summer when we sold him for what turned out to be a club record amount for Bournemouth, 20 million, which is a fair amount to play for basically an unproven 22-year-old center back. He played left center. Steve Cook and Steve Francis were the other defenders for Bournemouth. Daniel Sermon, the other Cook, two Cooks in the Bournemouth midfield, or center of pitch, and Smith on the right side. Junior Stanislas as your number 10. And then the front two of Defoe and Afobe. Defoe got hurt at some point, I think. Oh no, Defoe got taken off at halftime, was it? He was not very good. And then a couple other players for Bournemouth got hurt, so it was unfortunate for them. But they basically did this matching shape thing last weekend too, and it almost worked out for them. And for the most part, it was okay. It was working okay for them this week as well. Although basically, when you put 10 or 11 men behind the ball, does it really matter what formation you play? It's everybody in the box. It's like the whole for much of the game, it was an exercise of how many Bournemouth players can fit inside their own penalty area, and the answer is just about 9 or 10 comfortably. But often they had all 11 men behind the ball in their defensive third, and that's never easy to break down, even with Fabregas, whose passing was actually slightly off. So a slightly off target Fabregas. Morata, not necessarily consistently amazing, but a couple good passes from him and hold up play. It's never easy to break that sort of defense down. Cesc needs a rest, says Chuck. I fully agree. I think Fabregas went 90 minutes again, which seems outrageous. He seems to be playing 90 minutes all the time these days, and I understand that there is. I'm just going to look up his minutes here quickly. I understand that we don't have any other players, any other midfielder who is managing to stay consistently healthy, but playing Fabregas all the time seems like not the best. So that's 4 straight games where he's done the full 90 minutes in the Premier League, that is. And he's played all but 4 minutes of our Champions League campaign so far. So it's Iron Man Cesc after. It's like the exact opposite of how last season started, when he barely played, and then he got hurt, and then he got dropped, and then he had to convince Conte that he'd be good enough for a 12th man role, which seems to be probably his best, most ideal way to use him in this system. These days, because of injuries and other considerations, he's playing every game. So if we're working from the assumption that Fabregas playing in a midfield 2 is not ideal, we're actually doing all right. Winning a couple of games, losing a couple of games, but it could be a lot worse. We were playing in slow motion in the second half, says Abdul. True, in a way, but again, I think a lot of that had to do with just Bournemouth dropping deep and defending a lot, especially before the goal. It's hard to attack. It's hard to attack a mass defense like that at pace. And it seemed like a couple of times when we did have breaks, we couldn't quite hit him, and I think that's where. The impression of us playing at half speed or us playing poorly really comes from. There are a couple of missed opportunities, certainly when Hazard broke into space on the left, and even Fabregas missed him, or he didn't even make the pass because the ball got stuck under his feet or whatever. It's just, I guess certainly not the best game for Fabregas in terms of picking out players. Same thing, Bakayoko doing a lot of his usual little giveaways, lazy plays, and then he gets tired towards the end of the game and gives the ball away even more. At least no fouls this time. So we're improving in that regard from old Blue Hair now, as he promised to dye his hair blue after scoring his first goal. Unfortunately, his first goal was in that loss to Crystal Palace, so he didn't do it immediately afterwards because that probably would not have played well, and I think he realized that. But he finally did it this week, so we have old Blue Hair, Timoe Bakayoko, whose song goes, "He never gives the ball away." But unfortunately, that's not quite the case just yet. But maybe, he's still super young and learning the ropes of the league and the system. So when Conte comes back, I think Bakayoko's perception or his play will improve as well. I think he might, even more so than Fabregas, he might be a little overworked, and he seems to get tired quite a bit. Fabregas, apparently he has the stamina to at least last, although the last 10 minutes of this game he didn't do much other than make one run and stand around a lot. So yeah, need some numbers back. Drinkwater being available is nice, although I wouldn't expect we count on him as a starter in big games just yet. And we should be getting Conte back actually this week, hopefully for Roma, and if not at the latest, then for Manchester United on Sunday. Chuck says Cesc is best playing 30 minutes a game, start Drinkwater, and then sub in Cesc. I'm not even sure he needs 30 minutes, but yeah, it's as we've said many times now, the problem with Fabregas starting is that he's not on the bench to change games when we need him. And we kind of did a Fabregas-esque substitution with Drinkwater today, where he came on for a forward in the 79th minute, and we switched to the 3-5-2 in a more defensive look, more solid in the midfield for the final 10 minutes. And that's something we did quite often last season, with Fabregas being the guy coming off the bench to join the midfield two of like Conte and Matic. So we kind of did that with Drinkwater, and I suspect that pattern is something that Antonio would like to repeat in the coming games, either with Drinkwater or with Fabregas. So hopefully we do have the chance to do that. Today was a nice throwback in terms of subs timing and strategies used by the coach. If you remember last season, we talked a lot about how Conte liked to wait until perhaps a little too late to make his subs. Today, the first sub didn't come until like the 79th minute. Yeah, 79. Which is a little surprising considering we have a game in like 3 days on Tuesday, or 2 days. And it will probably involve a lot of the same players. But, that's I think that's Conte's preferred style, to not make any subs until around the late 70, with about 10-15 minutes to go. It seems to be his preferred time to make the first change. And so that's what we did today. It was a nice good throwback feeling, even if the score line wasn't as comfortable as we would have liked it to be. Yeah, a lot of comments about a good day for Eden Hazard, and he certainly, especially in the second half, he certainly showed up to create some havoc. He seemed a little more subdued in the first half, and I think possibly just not involved. I don't recall him touching the ball in like the first 10 minutes, and maybe having a couple of touches in the first 15. But he slowly, grew into the game. And if he was saving himself for midweek, that's fine by me. Because we got the win and he got his goal. So it was a really nice goal too, actually. I'm sure questions will be asked about how Begovic left his near post open, as there always are when goalkeepers leave the near post open. But there was an interview the goal. So Hazard's goal was, he just lashed it with his left, which is his power foot, as we know from previous years. Right foot is the accurate foot, left foot is the power foot for Hazard. So he just powered the ball past Begovic on his near post. Last season, Begovic was talking about this on an interview, and I forget exactly where this was, whether it was a podcast or a radio thing or whatever. But he was saying, he was asked about the whole near post, because everybody says goalkeepers shouldn't get beaten on the near post. And he said it's not the trick to beat somebody at the near post isn't placement, really, it's about the power. And that's exactly what we saw today. Hazard absolutely powering that ball past Begovic before he could even move. So it wouldn't really matter as long as it's not directly at the goalkeeper or at his flailing arms like Morata's shot earlier. It's going to go into the back of the net. So nice to see Hazard get off the schneid as far as goal scoring goes in the Premier League with his first of the season. Only took 10 games overall. Of course, it's not his 10th game because he's only been back for about a month, if a little longer. Morata is starting to worry me. Says Chuck, really miss Costa. He would have ripped that team apart today. Yeah, I don't know. Morata, he seems very much. I guess it's not surprising. He seems very much a confidence man, in a way. And if nothing else, that very much reminds me of Torres, where if things are going well for him, then like everything's gonna go well for him. But if there is one thing that goes against him, it always has a chance to, kind of spiral into something bigger than it should be. So that first miss off when Begovic cleared the ball and he cleared it directly to Hazard, and he passed it to Morata, and all he had to do was slot into basically one of the corners, an easy finish as you like, and he put it wide. That was like, here we go again, just another day of Morata getting beat to the ball and falling down and missing chances and trying audacious, mistimed overhead kicks and trying too hard and not trying hard enough. So yeah, he needs some steady goals. Oh, Morata probably needs more balls to his head. I don't know. We keep playing to his feet, which he's good at, and he made a really nice pass for Hazard's goal. But he seems to be even better sometimes when we're playing up to his head. So I'm not sure why that wasn't really part of the game plan today. Everything was to his feet. I'm not so sure if I'd be too worried about it. Costa himself went through several bad streaks, and I'm sure we can, we forget about that. We remember the good times. But there was like the second half of what was it? Second half of last season, even he wasn't nowhere nearly as effective as the first half. First half of that season when Mourinho got fired. That was just terrible for most of the time for Costa. Even if he was, perhaps the least terrible of all players, it was still pretty bad. When he was on form, Costa, he was pouring in goals. When he was off form, he could be very infuriating. So I don't know. I'm sure that said, I'm sure Costa would have indeed had a field day with Bournemouth today. But I think we would have also played perhaps a little differently with him on the pitch. Who knows? It's tough to tell. The ifs and the what ifs. Binny Blue says top four is a worry if we don't get a striker. I think top four is a worry regardless of who we get. But if Morata stays healthy, I think dude scored several goals in the first couple months of the season. So a few games without a goal, I don't think we're necessarily ready to. We should be ready to panic and throw in the towel. Plus, Batshuayi is going to step up and score some important goals. You and I both know this. Morata is very lazy. I don't know. And I think a lot of it was also much like what Hazard was Fabregas not being able to, or whoever was passing, where our long passes seemed to be off just a little bit. There were several good runs that both Hazard and Morata made through the lines and breaking the lines, and we just couldn't find them. We often underhit the ball, or a couple of times overhit the ball. It was just never quite accurate to make a difference, really. Would love to have a left wing back coming in next transfer window, someone who can defend and cross the ball as well. Yeah, I was seeing a fair amount of criticism of Alonso today and for the last few games. And unfortunately, I think with Alonso, it's just not having anybody to rotate with him. It's he's playing every game in both the Premier League and the Champions League, and he might get rotated after the League Cup, but that's only a couple of games so far. To his credit, he's staying healthy, but his impact has certainly lessened since the opening few weeks of the season. If you remember, Alonso had a pretty bad preseason, and there were plenty of concerns about him. He was subbed in every game almost, and he didn't seem to bother or care too much. And then he started the season really well, and especially that game against Spurs when he scored 2 goals. There's some of his best performances for Chelsea. I think he's probably just getting tired and he needs a proper rotational option, kind of like Zappacosta can provide on the right side, although Moses is injured now. But if we are to sign anybody in January, a left wing back certainly would be a decent option. Recently, Conte was talking about Baba Rahman possibly providing an option for us in January, which could be interesting, but Baba is coming off of an ACL injury, which seems to have had a fair amount of complications on its way of recovery, so maybe counting on him is not necessarily a good choice for backup. But Kennedy's fine for the League Cup. I don't think he's really been tested at all yet. Who we played? We played Everton, who were absolutely abject for at least the first half in that game, and then we played Nottingham Forest, who were also rotated and not very good. So it's not like Kennedy's really had a test there and something that would make him be an option for us in games that actually matter. So yeah. I think if Alonso gets some decent rest these days, he'll be back to his good self. Things like that terrible cross earlier today certainly won't endear him to anybody watching. But of course, everybody can hit a bad cross. But there are a couple pretty badly misplayed passes from Alonso as well. So. Yeah, it's. I'm not sure. He needs a rest, but we can't give him a rest because up next is Roma, and after that is Manchester United, and we need him for all 3 of those. So, yeah, good luck, Marcus. Good, rest well. Paul says, give the new signings a chance to settle in. I think they all have great potential. I agree. Yeah, they all have great potential, and I think we've given them plenty of time to settle in. Morata has had a couple rough games here, but doesn't mean he's. I don't think anybody's really calling for Conte to drop him or anything like that. So, same thing with Bakayoko. The kid's clearly talented, and if we play our cards right, he's going to be an important player for us for a long time. But he's possibly playing a bit too much. But that can be said for a lot of players. Left-footed center back is desperately needed, says Chuck. While true, where would he slot in right now? Because he can't really, in an ideal world, we have Azpilicueta on the right and David Luiz in the middle, and then either Rudiger or Cahill on the left. And I'm not sure we really need to drop any of those players. That said, I would really like to have a left-footed center back just to play that position, because Cahill and David Luiz are getting pretty old, especially in terms of football. Professional football sense. When you're over 30, you might as well just start retiring. So, yeah, I'm sure we'll be looking at some left-footed center backs, but if there's somebody who's right-footed and is amazing, I couldn't possibly tell you if Van Dijk is right-footed or left-footed, or if who is that kid from Bilbao? Oh, Aymeric Laporte, who was recently linked with Chelsea. I don't know if he's left or right-footed. Those two players are certainly highly rated, and if Chelsea were to go after him, I'm not sure the footedness would matter much at that point. A top 4 finish would be great this season, says John. Perhaps a quarterfinal in the Champions League, fair indication of where we are. Laporte is left-footed. Well, perfect. Let's go get him. Well, this is his buyout clause, like 65 million euros, so better start saving up those pennies in the couch cushions there, Uncle Roman. John says top 4 finish would be great. Perhaps quarterfinal of Champions League is a fair indication. I think making the knockout rounds in the Champions League should be the minimum expectation. At that point, it's kind of a bit of a crapshoot as to who you get drawn against. As we saw last few years we were there, it was PSG, and at this point, losing to like this iteration of PSG in the first knockout round wouldn't necessarily be terrible, but quarterfinal sounds pretty good to me. Top 4 finish is a must. Even not worrying about which knockout round of the or the Champions League we actually make it to. Top 4 finish is an absolute must. It might not guarantee Conte's job for ever and ever, but as far as the club's ambitions are concerned, we have to finish in the top 4. So that's looking all right so far, I think. We've had our bad moment, hopefully, with those 2 losses in a row, and then the draw against Roma. We certainly looked shaky enough against Watford, but got the win. We looked shaky against Everton in the second half, but that was a rotated squad, and it was a League Cup, so it doesn't really matter. But today, I think we got the expected performance that going to the second worst team in the Premier League, playing in front of their tiny, raucous crowd of some 11,000. It's probably not an easy place to play, especially if you don't get an early goal. Once we got into the second half, it's always going to be a tough one, especially if you can't get that second goal, which we were kind of unlucky, kind of unfortunate in terms of our own finishing. So yeah, I think I am fairly confident that we've navigated that rough stretch there, and certainly if we get 2 wins would be ideal. Obviously, winning against Roma would basically do the job for the Champions League groups, and then winning against Manchester United it was probably a must-win as far as must-wins go. But after these last 3, we were on to like three wins in a row now, and 2 in the Premier League. So hopefully, this is indeed another nice long winning streak in the making here. Yeah, a draw midweek would also be all right. I think we're up by 2 points on Roma in the Champions League group standings. And after Tuesday's game, we only have Atletico at home and then Karabag away. And I think the Karabag one is the next one. So I think Atletico at home, hopefully at that point, is a match that doesn't really matter to us anymore. So yeah, as long as we don't lose against Roma, I think we'll be good. And then we can go ahead and win against old Jose Mourinho, who, if we haven't seen, is up to his old usual antics of big game antics, of keeping it tight and playing for that 1 or 2 crucial key chances to score, which they did today. So they notched a really nice, or well, not really nice, but really important victory for them against the Spurs of all teams. You know, the best team in England, old Spurs, except when they're not, because they can't actually win a title. So City continue to rumble on, although they only won by 1 goal, and that wasn't really that close, I don't think, for most of the game. But they barely beat. Chuck says Mourinho will park the bus and try to use 12 players, maybe even 2 keepers. Yes, as many as he can get away with, for sure. There's going to be people popping out of laundry bins and, you know, ball boys, imported ball boys to steal the ball away from Hazard and things like that. Yeah, John says Manchester City are bound to implode at some stage. Yeah, we're still waiting. We're still waiting for that implosion. When was their implosion last year? It's right around this time, right? They won last season. Let's see if we can look this up. Last season they won at least their first 9 games, I want to say. 16. Yeah, last season they won their first 8 games in all competitions, and then they lost to Spurs at the beginning of October. So they're overdue. They're overdue. They're a little better this year, which you would expect, considering they spent £6 billion or however much. I didn't count. That may not be an exact figure, but they bought every player on earth to put together a squad that best coach in the world, Pep Guardiola, or is he? Who's the best coach in the world? Best coach in the world, Pep Guardiola, versus best coach in the world, Jose Mourinho, spending the most money. One of them will actually be best coach and probably win the league, unless somebody else comes out of nowhere to win the league. It's not looking like Chelsea at the moment, where we remain 9 points behind, but in 4th, just over +2 goal differential better than Arsenal, who also won. Unfortunately, Arsenal looked like they might actually put together another Arsenal-esque performance. They were losing to Swansea at home at half before goals from Kolasinac, who's supremely annoying in everything he does, and Aaron Ramsey got them the win. So, unfortunately, Tammy Abraham's Swansea City lost again. Yeah, Chuck's good point from Chuck there. It says, we barely have any starting internationals anymore. City has a starting 11 and most of the bench who start for their countries. Yeah, if you remember, it wasn't that long ago that basically every single player on Chelsea in the 24, 25-man squad was called up to a senior international team. These days, some players are getting old, so somebody like Fabregas doesn't get called up anymore. David Luiz, for some reason, is not preferred by the Brazilian coach. Somebody like Alonso isn't preferred by Spain. It's. Most of the starters, I think, still get called up, but certainly not. The situation is not necessarily the same, but it's slowly improving. Somebody like Conte has become a regular. Bakayoko, probably, if he continues to put in good performances, will become a regular for France. Drinkwater, for what it's worth, is probably in with a shout for an England spot. All the Belgians is fine. Hazard, Courtois, Batshuayi probably as their 3rd or 4th striker. Brazil seems to like Willian a lot, so he gets called up a lot. But yeah, even Ethan Ampadu is getting the Welsh call. So we'll get back to that point where we have the leadership and the experiences like that spread throughout the squad, and not just the first team, the first choice starters. Finally, we dropped Cahill and Willian. We're winning with a clean sheet, says Robin. Yeah, it could be a coincidence. I think somebody was pushing a stat around where since I think Azpilicueta has been the captain for about 6 games this season, and we've won all 6 of them. So there you go. Azpilicueta for captain. Eternal. Always and forever. Past, future, and present. Captain Dave. Azpilicueta is 28 years old. Did you know that? That just makes me feel old. He's been here for a fair amount of time. He is, in fact, Azpilicueta is just a handful of games away from becoming the next member of the 250 appearance club, which Gary Cahill joined over the weekend. Cahill, Azpilicueta, and Eden Hazard are the 3 most veteran, I guess, or longest serving members of the squad these days. So that's your old guard if you want to count it up. Although of course Hazard is only 26. Oh yeah. What were we talking about beforehand? Internationals. Yeah. All right. So next up for Chelsea is AS Roma. It was a game that we looked like we were winning. We were up 2-0, and then suddenly we were losing. But I mean, I guess we were winning it only on the score sheet or the scoreboard. We were not really ever in control of that game, and Roma kind of made us pay for it. Of course, we shouldn't forget that Edin Dzeko, Ballon d'Or nominee Edin Dzeko, scored 2 of the best goals you'll ever see. Probably, certainly that first one. The pass from whoever it was on the halfway line, and just the first time volley from Dzeko past Courtois. I mean, that's a ridiculous goal, and I'm not sure Dzeko himself thinks he can pull that off again. But still, good resilience shown by Chelsea in that game to come back and tie it up and get at least the draw. Similar resilience shown against Watford just a few days later, putting to bed any doubts about the resilience not shown against Crystal Palace at the start of October, or I guess it was middle of October. It was the first game in October after the international break. I think more so than anything, that loss to Palace really just kind of shifted the narrative. I mean, it's one thing to lose to Manchester City, and we only lost 1-0, which is pretty amazing considering how good Manchester City are against anybody else. That was how September ended, and then we came back from the international break and then just put in this absolute turd of a performance against Palace, and that really shifted the narrative around. And I mean, it's really, since then, we made some mistakes against Roma, but came back. We made lots of mistakes against Watford and came back to win. And now 2 pretty controlled and good, and today even dominant wins against Everton and Bournemouth, even if they were only by 1 goal each. I think right now we can say the crisis has been well overblown, and certainly you can understand Conte's frustrations in press conferences where he's basically called out the media for being fake from top to bottom. He called it bullshit. This is bullshit. And it pretty much was so right now I think we can say that the crisis has been overblown. Of course, come the next 2 games and the narrative can shift 180 degrees just as easily as before. So Robin says we could have managed at least a point against City if Conte didn't screw up. Yeah, certainly there were some questionable decisions in that game against City, namely putting on Willian after Morata went off injured. But let bygones be bygones. Again, I don't think there's too many real questions about the performance. Yeah, there was mistakes, and Conte owned up to them. But that Palace loss, that's one that I think we'd like to have back for sure. But a win or a draw against Roma. I'm sure a draw won't feel very good, but a win or a draw against Roma and then a win against Manchester United will set us up really nicely heading into November. Because after those two games, it's yet another international break. Can't get enough of that crap. But fortunately, that's the last international break for this calendar year and for the next few months. After that, we begin the grind through November and then into the holiday period. Right now, Chelsea are scheduled for 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it looks like we have basically two games per week into infinity, ad infinitum, into the end of the year. A lot of away games coming up here. This is the first of 5 in 6 that are away. Only that Manchester United game is at home. After the international break, we'll be going to West Brom away, which is not a good place to play. Then Karabag away, which is like in Azerbaijan, so halfway around the world, which somehow still counts as Europe. And then away to Liverpool, which also won't be easy. So that's three pretty tough away games there after the international break, putting even more pressure on making sure we get these 2 results here this week. But hopefully we will. I mean, I think there's a lot of good things today that we can build on, and the last couple of games too. Certainly, Bournemouth probably weren't the greatest challenge of all time. First half they were pretty bad. Second half, some of the changes they made, some of the players they brought on like Jordan Ibe, were dangerous enough. But I think everybody in defense, especially Azpilicueta, did really well. And if Azpilicueta is back to his best, then I have no concerns about the defense at all. He said, hopefully. It's all about the power of positive thinking, right? If you say you don't have any concerns about the defense, then we'll be fine. It'll be fine. Robin says, Morata seems a bit bothered after his injury. He was flying high before. And that's a good point, actually. I think that's one thing that's kind of been overlooked is Morata did pull his hamstring, and he doesn't seem as confident or as strong since coming back. Hopefully that is indeed just some injury thing, as we saw with Hazard a couple of years ago. Even small nagging minor injuries can affect your play if it plays on your mind or whatever, even if there's no actual issue physically. So yeah, hopefully this is just a bit of a blip here for Morata, and he'll be back to scoring in no time at all. And it's been a while. When was the last goal? Last goal he scored was Atletico, right? Yeah. Away to Atletico at the end of December. So he's gone. He's gone a couple months, but it's only a handful of games, so I don't think it's anything to be necessarily worried about just yet. Maybe he'll go back to Italy here in a couple days and get back on the score sheet. He did get. I think he got the assist today on the Hazard goal. Yeah, he got the assist. So it's not all been wasted and useless. So it's easy. I think we're quick to criticize, but I think Morata will be just fine. He just needs a couple goals, as all strikers do. Next 2 games are season defining, says John. And that's probably a good note good conclusion to our time here today. Certainly after today's win, these next 2 games will decide. I don't want to say Conte's future, but probably Conte's future, right? I mean, in the worst case, if we lose this, we're basically out of the title race. I guess if we lose against Roma, it's not the end of the world, but certainly United, that's going to be a season-defining game, much like the 4-0 was last season. So, I'm not bold enough to hope for a repeat of that, but a nice win over United, especially just on the cusp of the 2-week break, is certainly would be nice to change the narrative and set the team up for the rest of the season here, the midweek or the mid-season. We'll be down. I will be the 11th game of a 38-game season. So, yeah. United were a bit lucky today, says Robin, but they look strong defensively. That's about sums up a Mourinho team, doesn't it? That right there. I mean, his strategy in big games is always to keep it tight and then play for the one or two chances. Sometimes you need a little bit of luck, sometimes you don't. When Lukaku hit the post on a header for them, it looked like possibly they'll have to settle for a draw, but then just some poor defensive errors from Spurs and a nice shot from, Martial, got them the win. So, that's Jose #1 plan right there. Park the bus, indeed. I think they might even have Pogba back. I thought I saw a headline along those lines, which could be unfortunate for us and fortunate for them. But for now, I think we need to worry about the Roma game a little bit. We actually have a decent amount of time off, or not time off. Roma game's Tuesday night, and Manchester United game is not until Sunday, so that's an extra day to recover and get ready. So right now, the focus clearly needs to be on AS Roma. Actually, let's see how they did today. Are they playing today? Roma are 5th in Serie A, and since their 3-3 draw, they've notched 2 1-0 victories over Torino and Crotone, whoever that is, and they play Bologna today. So pretty easy schedule there for Roma. But it's a fairly competitive Serie A these days, so they remain stuck in 5th. Which just about puts them on the level of Chelsea. So we'll see how they do today. Bologna are actually a mid-table team these days in Serie A. So, yeah. Maybe Conte can get some game time against Roma, then start against United. I think that's a pretty decent plan. I would expect us to line up in a 3-5-2 for Roma. We are away. Put David Luiz in midfield, play Christensen in the center of defense, and then play somebody like Drinkwater or Bakayoko, or Fabregas and Bakayoko, don't really matter. Make it a 3-man midfield. Start with Morata and whoever up top, maybe even Batshuayi, it doesn't even matter. I'd like to win the game against Roma, but I'm okay with kind of the performance or the lineup or the plan that we used against Spurs last 2 times we played him. Play for the draw is fine by me. Certainly set up the squad for Sunday's game, I think, is priority number 1. We'll see. Roma are very good defensively. Somehow we scored 3 goals against them, but they're in Serie A, they're no joke. So, if we keep it tight at the back, we always have a good chance of getting a point out of there, and that's in a way all we need. So we will probably talk to you, or I will probably talk to you. Let's not use the royal we here. We'll have another video after the Roma game on Tuesday, which hopefully we'll get some points out of, and then look forward to the big game next Sunday that will define the narrative for the next several weeks. So that should be fun. And the build-up, I'm sure we'll get to have plenty of Conte versus Mourinho nonsense invented and stoked by the media. So gird your loins for all that. Before then, enjoy the Champions League. So that's always fun. It's 1-0 today to Chelsea over Bournemouth. Eden Hazard scoring the goal early in the second half. A really nice, really well-taken power shot that we'd like to see Hazard take more shots. So there we go. It was a nicely well-taken goal. A nice assist from Morata. And a good controlled, mostly controlled performance from Chelsea for a fairly comfortable 3 points. That's all that matters in the end. So if you watched any part of it, any part of this, thanks for watching. Thanks for the questions. Be sure to visit the website, weain'tgotnohistory.com. And we'll talk to you